least provide an initial shipment of aid earlier this week. They say that children have been deprived of so many basic things for the last 2 years. One other thing, I wanted to provide a bit of context that I found that was very helpful for my own understanding of this story, and especially the way that children have been affected. And it's from Rasha Al-Kidi. She lives in Dubai, but she's originally from Mosul. And she says, you know, we, the media, talk about the plight of the children of Mosul after living under ISIL for 2 years. But really, these children have been living under 13 years of sanctions, 2 wars, an additional 13 years of violence. So another good detail she points out is that the average Iraqi child has lived through no less than 3 car bombs before the age of 10. So there's a great deal of trauma here that we're seeing, Kamal. And fortunately, there are aid agencies that are
because it's about 30 minutes long, actually. Have you been able to dig up anything more on that, where it came from? And
Sure. So this was posted on the 15th, and I reached out to one expert on a lot of ISIL propaganda, Charlie Winter, who says that this video is essentially an amalgamation of about 2 weeks of footage. We see that in another release this week, ISIL is also giving a bit of, they have these booths that people can go to and receive flash drives with propaganda. And unfortunately, on the topic of children, ISIL does use children a lot in the video, in some of the propaganda that they're using. And we should remember that there are still an estimated 600,000 children that are living under ISIL custody or captivity in Mosul.
Very interesting stuff. Add Andrew Chappelle if you want to connect with Andrew directly. Any questions about what's happening in Mosul or any stories coming up further on the grid. So many ways to get in touch with us. Remember, we're on WhatsApp, we're on Facebook, and we're on Twitter, and you should see all the contact details coming up there at the bottom of the screen just now. All right, Yemen now, where a cessation of hostilities is supposed to take effect on Thursday, and yes, you have probably heard that before. Ceasefires have not worked in Yemen. However, the US Secretary of State John Kerry announced this latest one between the Saudi-led military coalition on the one side and the Houthi rebels on the other side. This was on Tuesday. Since then, though, there's actually been government leaders were ignored during the negotiations.
They haven't done any progress. They have withdrawn today exactly in Taiz. They have withdrawn from the whole south, from Ma'rib, from Hadramaut. The government forces have made progress in Saada, in Al-Boqa, in Kitaf and other areas. The government forces around Sana'a. The Houthis have made no progress for a long time, and we can accept them politically, but we cannot accept their militias and their military power. They have to be our partners if they give up the weapons. We aim at putting an end to the war. We push for the national unity. We push for the peace. We push for the settlement, but we are not for paving the way for a war that will go for a long time. We need to stop the war right now. We need not to have a civil war through hitting the legitimate government and go into an unfair settlement, not for the sake of the legitimate government. And we will give all the country to the militias.
Well, we've got Hashim Al-Barra with us here in studio, correspondent for Al Jazeera. You've been to Yemen, I've probably lost track of the amount of times you've reported from there, obviously before things became too dangerous. Ceasefire, cessation of hostilities, whatever you want to call it. We've been here before, haven't we?
Exactly. This has been tried before by the international community, the United Nations in particular. Most of the time, the ceasefire either didn't hold or collapsed because of huge differences between all the different factions. What is quite different this time is that the United States of America is on. John Kerry made a visit to the region, and he was trying to convince the Saudi-led coalition and the Houthis to put an end to the fighting, which has claimed the lives of thousands of people, destroyed huge areas in the country. The Houthis seem to be now willing to go ahead. However, as we speak, there's no ceasefire.
I found it interesting that the fact that this was on the radar of John Kerry in the United States, while Syria got so big and there was a real push there, which failed again. And it's like, well, they didn't forget about Yemen.
For different reasons. There is the sectarian divide between the Shias, led by the Houthis, and the Sunni community, led by the President Hadi, and the Americans are willing to put an end to the crisis in Yemen for different reasons. AQAP, which is an affiliate of Al-Qaeda, has been taking advantage of the situation to further expand its reach, particularly in the southern part of the country. ISIL has started in the Aden, which is one of the most urban areas of Yemen. Now, some areas are under the control of ISIL. So the Americans are concerned that if the fighting continues, it's just going to be further disintegration of Yemen. And the two groups which will take advantage will definitely be AQAP and ISIL.
Hashim, Jackie from Beijing has been on WhatsApp sending us in a question. She says Yemen's not on the news agenda in China. It most likely gets ignored. That might be not too much of a surprise. But she's asking you, is the war in Yemen being ignored because of the imbalance of public awareness of all these wars in the Middle East? In other words, we know all about Syria and we know all about ISIL, but Yemen gets forgotten.
I remember each time I was in Yemen, I would be told by people, you know what, why the international community doesn't care about us? It's just because we are a poor nation. And unfortunately, it seems that because the international community has been looking into different regional conflicts, particularly Syria, and now the push to dislodge ISIL from Mosul, that Yemen is on the back burner. However, I have to say that Yemen is a critical area for the Americans, in particular, for two different reasons. First of all, is because it's a busy route for oil tankers on the Red Sea and the Arabian Sea, and at the same time they are quite concerned that AQAP, which has threatened in the past to use Yemen as a platform to launch attacks against Western targets, so they are definitely now willing to put an end to the conflict. Kamal, there's also another issue. The international community has been saying over the last few months that enough is enough. We need to see an end to this war because thousands of people have been killed, mostly civilians. Humanitarian aid agencies have been accusing both the Saudi-led coalition and the Houthis for killing civilians, targeting civilians, and also starving the Yemenis.
Hashim Ahl-Bara, at Hashim Ahl, if you want to connect with him directly on Twitter. Thank you so much. Saw the Yemeni Foreign Minister just a little bit earlier. Well, we're just joined here in Studio 14 by the Australian Foreign Minister, Julie Bishop, who's here in Doha to open an embassy here in Qatar. She began our interview by acknowledging the importance of her country's relationship with countries in the Middle East.
Certainly there's great potential for us to expand our connections in the Middle East. That's why we're opening an embassy here in Doha. But there are huge opportunities for us to engage more deeply on the economic front, but also strategically it's important for us to have good relations in the Middle East.
Because?
Well, we are joined together in the fight against terrorism. This is a real issue for Australia, a national security issue, because there are a significant number of Australians on a per capita basis who have taken up the support of ISIL in Syria and Iraq, and so we need to work closely with friends and partners in the Middle East to track foreign terrorist fighters and do what we can to defeat terrorism.
Times that Australia hits the headlines as for Manus Island and Nauru and the asylum seekers there, and most recently we've had this deal with the United States. Why, I guess, is what I want to know. Why the United States? Why make this deal now?
Australia has been committed to stopping the criminal people smuggling networks that flourished a few years ago. And when we came into government in 2013, we were determined to dismantle these people smuggling networks that prey on vulnerable people, extract enormous sums of money from them, put them on unseaworthy boats, and then they make a very dangerous journey to Australia. And we've seen the consequences of this type of action in Europe, where the people smugglers are making a fortune out of the misery of others, and we've seen significant numbers of deaths at sea. This was occurring on the journey to Australia, so we've put a stop to that. We have dismantled the people smuggling trade into Australia. What it meant was that a number of people who were seeking asylum were sent to offshore processing centres in Manus and Nauru. We inherited this burden, this caseload, and we're seeking to resolve it, which we've done with an arrangement with the United States, with Cambodia, with Papua New Guinea, with Nauru.
You talked about the misery of these people and stopping the criminal activities going on. I understand that, but these people are miserable still on Manus Island and Nauru as well, and that's been well documented.
There are those who have been found to be owed protection, and we are working with third countries for them to be resettled. There are those who are found not to be refugees, not to be owed protection, and we're working to send them back. So Australia has been working very hard to resolve the situation that we inherited in 2013. And what we have done is close 17 detention centres. We have removed all children that were put in detention by the previous government, and we're now finding resettlement opportunities for those who are found to be genuine refugees.
Do you acknowledge, though, the conditions and the hardship that they go through there? Because this has been, we've reported it ourselves on Al Jazeera. We've spoken to people who've worked as teachers, in fact, in Nauru, and they've talked about the terrible conditions that people are in.
I've visited Nauru.
So tell me, what do you...
The conditions are adequate. They are appropriate for Nauru. The conditions that are given to those who are in detention in Nauru are in some instances better than the conditions that the people of Nauru themselves experience. And what we've been seeking to do is find resettlement opportunities for them. Some of them have been resettled in Nauru and have started businesses and are living there. Likewise, in Papua New Guinea, there are opportunities for those who are found to be genuine refugees to be resettled in Papua New Guinea. Many Australians live in Papua New Guinea, and many Papua New Guineans find the circumstances obviously to be ideal for Papua New Guineans. But what we will not do is encourage the people smuggling trade to be reinvigorated. That's why we've been so tough on border protection. That's why we've been so unrelenting in ensuring that we stop these criminal activities, which is essentially a form of human trafficking.
There you go, the Australian Foreign Minister Julie Bishop, who was here in the studio just a little while ago. Looking at the live wall, checking what's happening, both the Associated Press and Reuters here are flagging up a news conference from President Obama and Chancellor Merkel at 15:45 GMT, which is about 20 minutes from now. So we may see that here on the NewsGrid or in later shows on Al Jazeera. Right now, though, we're going to go to London and see Lauren Taylor, who's got the rest of the day's news for us.
Kamal, thank you very much indeed. At least 95 people have been killed in and around rebel-held parts of Aleppo as airstrikes continue to hit the city. A pro-rebel news service says Syrian government and Russian strikes hit neighbourhoods in the east of the city. But Moscow has denied its jets hit the city as part of the renewed bombardment that began 3 days ago. It says it's sticking to its moratorium on airstrikes in the city. Osama bin Javed has more from Gaziantep, near Turkey's border with Syria.
It is day 3 of unrelenting airstrikes on the besieged city of Aleppo, home to nearly 300,000 people. Stories that we've heard from inside the city say that neighborhoods like Al Ansari have been hit again this morning. But the other development that we've seen since yesterday is that the outskirts of Aleppo, the countryside of Aleppo province, is also being bombarded quite heavily. There are lots of people who've died, and there are a number of people who activists say are buried under the rubble. But because there are no rescuers there, they can't be pulled out. In the latest development, we've heard of a car bombing that has taken place near the city of Azaz. A number of people have died, but we believe that it is due to the infighting between various rebel factions. So the situation on the ground remains quite sketchy, and people inside the besieged city of Aleppo are quite desperate for any international help that they can get. But so far, we've had a muted response from the world leaders about this latest onslaught, which has entered its 3rd day.
Japan's Prime Minister is set to be the first world leader to meet US President-elect Donald Trump. Shinzo Abe has left Tokyo and is en route to New York for the meeting. Abe is expected to seek reassurances that Trump will remain committed to the US-Japan security alliance. He may also try to sway Trump to back the major international trade deal, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which Trump has strongly criticised. Well, Trump's contact with foreign leaders and well-wishers since his election victory has been rather unconventional. The Egyptian President ABDEL Sisi was the first to telephone Trump to congratulate him ahead of closer allies like the leaders of Britain and Germany. Australia's Malcolm Turnbull was second. It's reported that the Australian ambassador to the US got Trump's personal phone number from the golfer Greg Norman, who's a friend of the businessman. The President-elect also met Britain's anti-EU Brexit campaigner Nigel Farage at Trump Tower last weekend, ahead of any meeting with the British Prime Minister Theresa May. Protesters have gathered in Los Angeles to demonstrate against the appointment of Steve Bannon to Donald Trump's White House team. Bannon has been Trump's chief strategist. The former chief of the right-wing Breitbart News website headed Trump's campaign in the final months before the election. The site promoted conspiracy theories, and Bannon's appointment has prompted protests from the public. House Democrats have also sent a letter to Trump asking him to rescind the appointment. Hillary Clinton has made her first public remarks since conceding to Donald Trump last week. Speaking at an event run by Children Defence Fund founder Marian Wright Edelman, she admitted the last 7 days had been difficult.
Now, I will admit, coming here tonight wasn't the easiest thing for me. There have been a few times this past week when all I wanted to do was just to curl up with a good book or our dogs and never leave the house again. But if there's anyone who knows how to pick yourself up and get back on your feet and get to work, it is Marion. And
that's it for me for now. Let's go back to Kamal.
Thank you, Lauren. We'll see you a little later on the grid. Remember, so many ways to get in touch with us here at NewsGrid. If you want to tweet me directly at Kamal AJE, use that hashtag always, which is AJ NewsGrid. You can do that on Twitter at AJ English is our Twitter feed. Facebook.com/AJ NewsGrid. Hello to anyone who's watching on the live stream there, and thank you for sending in your questions. You can do that. Also the WhatsApp number 501 with a +974 at the start. If you've got any pictures or video you can send us from the scene of some of our stories, then please do that via WhatsApp. Still ahead on today's grid, our reporter Steve Chow, who gained special access to the Philippines President Rodrigo Duterte to find out more about that controversial leader. The headlines at AlJazeera.com and what's trending, and I always love seeing what is trending here. The variety of stories, not just the top stories of the day. That story about decriminalised drug policy in Portugal was #1 yesterday, still #3 on the grid today, or I should say on the what's trending. Plus one of our picture galleries on climate change in at #5. That's the type of things that you are looking at right now at AlJazeera.com. Okay, Barack Obama's in Berlin for his last trip to Europe as US President, meeting the German Chancellor Angela Merkel right now. It was 8 years ago when he visited this very city as a presidential candidate. Now he wraps up his presidency back in the country considered to be one of America's strongest allies. Just waiting for a news conference to happen. They're setting up there in Berlin, the podium, the flags all in place. We'll bring you that live when it happens, of course. But in the meantime, we're going to talk to Dominic Kane, our correspondent who's live in Berlin. What do you expect the two leaders would be talking about? I mean, when I think about Germany, I think the refugee issue is such a big one. Is that the type of thing they would be discussing?
Well, that may well be something that's touched upon by the two leaders, Kamal. Certainly the example that Germany has provided to the rest of the continent of Europe is one that has been mentioned before by the President, the role that Angela Merkel as Chancellor has played in outlining her humanitarian side, in saying that people can come to Germany and opening the borders, as it were, is something that has been lauded. So certainly we can expect that they may well touch upon it. And let's remember that more than 1 million people came to this country in 2015. That number has shrunk considerably this year with the closure of the Balkan route for refugees earlier this year, at the start of this year in fact, and the latest figures suggest that perhaps 400,000 refugees will come into Germany in the course of this year 2016. But the other issues that they will be touching upon, well, we know earlier on today Barack Obama in an interview with German media praised the role that Angela Merkel has played on the global stage, said that she was an example of stability, of responsibility, and he urged on the German citizens, he said that he thought that she was someone who they should treasure, that certainly he treasured her partnership with him. You mentioned earlier on the speech that he gave here in Berlin in the summer of 2008 when he was a senator, where he appealed to the internationalist tendencies both in his country and in Germany, saying that countries needed to work together. Well, it's worth making the point that there are many in Germany now who wonder whether Angela Merkel will be able to work together quite as well as she has with Barack Obama, with Donald Trump, and certainly some in the media in about 20 minutes or so.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dominic. We'll come back to you after that, waiting for Barack Obama and Angela Merkel. We've got Andrew Chappell with us, though, right here, right now. You know, we're talking about refugees there. In fact, Sue Roy Nauman on Facebook has said the US should definitely be taking more refugees because the US made them refugees, is her argument there. Can you expand on the refugee story in Germany for us?
Right, so with President Obama in Germany, this is one topic that is frequently discussed, and it is the fact that the German people, the German government are accepting so many refugees from Syria and other places. The US has come under a lot of criticism because they are the largest donor to the Syrian humanitarian response, but only accept about 100,000 refugees, 10,000 Syrian refugees. If we just look at this visualization here, we can see some of the refugee flows from a number of countries around the world. And I'll get this to work at some point for you. There it is, great. So you can see that there are people coming from all over the world, especially to places like Germany. And in this next visual here, you can see that if you look at some of the places they're leaving from, Syria, Afghanistan, and other places, you can kind of get a sense of where they're coming from. And if you look over there on the other side, Germany is one of the major destinations. Now, if you kind of think about the burden that Germany has put on itself, the fact that it's so open with refugees, if that were about 500,000 people wanting to go to Germany, that's about 0.6% of the population. If it was a similar number in the United States, that's just about 0.02% of the population. So it is definitely a larger number for the Germans. And we've been asking our community here on the NewsGrid, do you think that the United States has a responsibility to accept more refugees. And 67% of you say yes, the U.S. should accept more refugees. There is the responsibility there. 24% of you say no, and 9% say not sure. As always, we want to hear from you, so go ahead and send us a tweet, share your views on this story and any others using the hashtag AJNewsGrid. Come on.
Thank you, Andrew. Andrew Chappelle, at Andrew Chappelle, if you want to tweet him directly here in the studio. Well, we're moving on now. Rodrigo Duterte, the Philippines president, known for not mincing his words. We've seen that since he took office in May. The Philippines president has not hesitated to speak his mind, even if he risks offending others. In fact, sometimes you wonder if he wants to offend others. Well, he's certainly accusing Western countries of failing refugees, and he is welcoming them with open arms. Al Jazeera correspondent Steve Chow got rare access to the controversial leader.
In his 4 months in office, Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte has not shied from controversy. He's handed his military and police robust powers, declared a war on drugs that's left thousands dead, and now a new announcement. He says his impoverished nation of 100 million will take in any and all refugees.
They can always come here, and we will welcome them until we are filled to the brim, and it's all right.
Over a month, Duterte gave 101 East unfettered access to his many campaigns. He's already spending hundreds of millions in a war to crush the armed group Abu Sayyaf in the south. He's devoting even more to funding his battle against illicit drugs.
These guys, I really do not know what's under my.
The president says his decision to welcome refugees is due to a failure by the West to help.
They seem to be very accommodating. Oh, human rights. And suddenly they change course. Say, oh no, you stay there. We build a wall, barbed wire. And now the hypocrisy is there, staring at us eyeball to eyeball.
The EU and US have accused him of violating human rights by using death squads to kill drug dealers.
And just pissed off by so many calls from Europe. Oh, you should not put people to death.
On the presidential plane, he argues he's saving his country and now trying to save others in need.
If I look like a bad boy to them, I really don't give a shit. Who are they to me? They're nothing.
It's hard to know how genuine Duterte's offer to refugees is. He often changes his mind. But on his dislike for Western powers, that is unlikely to change anytime soon.
Steve Chow with that report, and just by chance, Steve was here in Doha today. He's actually going to be on the stream at 19:30 GMT, which is about 4 hours from now. But I caught up with him in the newsroom earlier for a chat about what it was really like hanging out with Rodrigo Duterte. So welcome to Doha, first of all, Steve. We don't see you here terribly often.
Thanks, Kamal. Yeah, we don't get a chance often to get to headquarters. We're often mostly out in the field in Asia.
Well, which is what you've been, as we saw in your report with Rodrigo Duterte. The only question I can ask, and anyone will want to ask, is what is he really like? Because we've got an image of him, and you wonder, is it the real guy?
Amazingly, who the world sees is who he really is.
Okay.
You know, he's the guy that shoots off his hip, you know, says unconventional things, often controversial things. He is lewd about women at times. He swears, but that is who he is. But at the same time, there's also perhaps a gentle side to him that most people don't get a chance to see. And we were given a chance to see that because we had spent time with him karaokeing. We had dinner with him, and
karaokeing.
Karaokeing.
Go on. I need to know more. What did you sing? What did he sing?
Oh, he loves the classics.
Okay.
So, you know, he was singing Sinatra, one of his most popular people to emulate.
Yeah.
You know, he has his own karaoke bar in Davao.
Yeah.
So, you know, when he gets a chance, even as president, when he gets a chance to get away, he goes to this bar. It's closed, unfortunately, to the public now that he's president, which sort of is something that he's not very happy with because he says he misses having, most importantly, the girls coming in to spend time with him. He's quite a ladies' man, even at 71 years of age.
71, wow.
71.
So how did he take to having you and the crew around like that? I mean, clearly he didn't modify his behavior at all, but I don't know if you've got a camera and a reporter following you all the time.
And he usually doesn't like the media much at all, so we were very surprised that he was willing to allow us this behind-the-scenes access. And I think part of this was that we had spent time with him earlier this year when he was just a candidate for presidency, and he was 4th in the polls at the time, and a long shot. No one expected him to win, perhaps even himself. But because he touched the nerve on the populist sort of feeling, they brought him into the presidency. Okay. How was he when we were with him and had the camera in his face? Yeah. I think he was amazingly patient with us, and I think he felt that we were giving him a chance to speak and speak his mind, and also he was being given a chance to show the world all sides of him.
Steve, lovely to see you.
Yeah, lovely to see you too. Thanks, Kamal.
That's a 101 East you're going to want to see. It is called Duterte, a President's Report Card. Thursday at 22:30 GMT, so that's today. That's an hour after Steve is on the stream, actually. And then, of course, it'll be online on the 101 East page at aljazeera.com. Now, a policeman in the US state of Minnesota has been charged with second-degree manslaughter for shooting a black man. Officer Geronimo Yanez opened fire on Philando Castile after stopping his car in St. Paul. News of Castile's death went viral on social media when his fiancée, you might remember this one, live streamed the whole thing on Facebook Live. Looking at some of those pictures now. Days of protest followed that incident. AJ Plus has an update on the story.
I will, sir. No worries. I will.
Unreasonable fear cannot justify the use of deadly force. Officer Yanez then said, "Don't pull it out." Castile responded, "I'm not pulling it out." And Reynolds also responded by saying, "He's not pulling it out."
Stay with me.
Plenty more, of course, online at AJ Plus's Facebook page. Back at the Live, we're having a look at what's happening. Still waiting for the US President Barack Obama and the German Chancellor Angela Merkel to speak after their meeting, probably their final one, with Obama as president. We'll bring you that live when it happens. Back now to Lauren Taylor, though, in London with more of the rest of the day's news. Hi, Lauren.
Thanks, Kamal. About 100 refugees and migrants are missing, feared drowned, after their dinghy capsized in the Mediterranean. It's believed to have gone down off the coast of Libya. Doctors Without Borders says 27 of the 130 people on board survived. More than 340 people have died in migrant boat sinkings this week, and more than 3,200 have been rescued since Saturday. Leonard Doyle from the International Organization for Migration says the recent surge in deaths is disturbing.
What we're really looking at is a 5 or 6 times increase in the numbers of deaths in November compared to last year. So whatever the reason for it, many, many more migrants are taking to the seas. They're being encouraged to do so by smugglers, and they're desperately trying to get into Europe. One assumes before the gates close. But the result is that many are dying, and of course amongst them you have children and women, many unaccompanied minors.
South Korea's parliament has given the go-ahead for a special prosecutor to investigate a corruption scandal involving the president. Park Geun-hye is under increasing pressure to resign after being accused of allowing a close friend to meddle in state affairs. She'll become the first sitting South Korean president to be interrogated in a criminal case. A French court has upheld a decision by far-right leader Marine Le Pen's party to expel her father as a member. But the court has also ruled that Jean-Marie Le Pen can remain the honorary president of the National Front, which he founded. He was expelled last year for controversial comments, including a reference to Nazi gas chambers, which he suggested were merely a detail of World War II history. Natasha Butler has more from Paris.
Well, what Jean-Marie Le Pen wanted was to be reintegrated into the far-right National Front Party, a party that he founded in 1972. Now, just over a year ago, a committee of the party actually decided to expel him over some anti-Semitic comments that he'd made. Now, Jean-Marie Le Pen has been convicted many times over the years for inciting racial hatred, but at this point, the 88-year-old was seen as a liability for the party because the National Front is basically trying to soften its image. It's trying to present itself as more palatable to a wider public, less extreme and less xenophobic. Now, this is especially important for the leader of the National Front, Jean-Marie Le Pen's daughter, Marine Le Pen, because she is, of course, a presidential candidate and she's widely expected to get through to the second round of the presidential election next year. Now, her popularity has risen over the years. She wants to see that continue. So this is why you might imagine she might be breathing a sigh of relief that her father will be kept out of the spotlight after this court decision.
That's it from me for now. Back now to Kamal.
Thank you, Lauren. Plenty more ahead for you in the NewsGrid. Actually, why don't you get in touch with us as well? Please do that. Use the hashtag AJNewsGrid. Any thoughts on the show, what you want us to be covering as well? Facebook.com/AJNewsGrid is where to watch us streaming and to send us any comments. And the Facebook number, the WhatsApp number is 501 11149 with a +974 at the start. Right, still ahead. On the NewsGrid, the world's wildlife teetering on the brink of extinction, how the hunger for tusks, horns and hides is driving a thriving black market and lining the pockets of the poachers. You're with the NewsGrid live on air and streaming online at Facebook Live, YouTube and at aljazeera.com. I'm Kamal Santamaria. Thanks for staying with us. The global illegal wildlife industry we're going to look at now. Did you know? Two things here. First, it is estimated to be worth $20 billion and it's driven mostly by Chinese and Vietnamese demand for decorations and traditional medicines. But did you also know the Earth has lost half of its wildlife in the last 40 years, with many to become extinct soon? We're going to start off with the elephant in the room. In 1930, up to 10 million African elephants roamed the earth, but by the late 1980s, only 1% of that still existed. And these days, more than 50 are killed every day just for the tusks. We've also got rhino, the world's second largest land mammal after the elephant. Been around for over 50 million years, but the population has seen a decline. Well, it's basically gone. 95% is what it's declined in the last 40 years for the same reasons as the elephant. And then there's this little fellow, which I've learned about today. He's called the pangolin, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. And the poaching of this little guy is nothing short of epidemic in Southeast Asia. The number of pangolin poached and sold is about 10 times that of the rhino. These little guys expected to become extinct in 25 years. Well, stricter law enforcement in China in recent years has driven many buyers to Vietnam, but conservation groups accuse its government of failing to enforce the law. Andrew Thomas has more now from Hanoi.
This is the conference room in Hanoi, Vietnam, where The conference on the illegal trafficking of rare animals will begin very shortly. Prince William will give his speech to the Duke of Cambridge from this stage. It's kind of his baby, really, this conference. First organised in London 2 years ago, it was followed up with a second conference in Botswana last year. This is the third, and this conference is about putting commitments made at those into action points. But even before this conference begins, delegates I've been speaking to from various anti-trafficking NGOs are saying that they are concerned that the draft statement for this contains yet more waffle, frankly, more words rather than action points. Now, Vietnam is a pretty restrictive country when it comes to reporting. We have not been allowed to do any live reporting from this conference at all, at least that's what they're saying at the moment, which slightly stymies our coverage. What we will hope to do is a bunch of different reports during the day that we record and then send to the newsroom in Doha as quickly as possible after that to try and get news lines to air as soon as possible. But ordinarily we have the technology to go live from anywhere, including here, and it's disappointing that various authorities here won't let us do that. But there are lots of sensitivities. I've been told by different NGOs here that their reports that they wanted to publish at this conference were vetted in advance by the Vietnamese government that is very sensitive about all these issues to do with illegal trafficking, and that some of those reports have not been approved. They're not allowed to present them here. So anyway, the conference is yet to begin formally, and we'll see what does come out.
Great stuff there, Andrew Thomas with his mobile phone there. Plenty more online. Have a look at this, The Journey of a Rhino Horn, an infographic from the interactive team at aljazeera.com, giving you all the details, some quite staggering numbers actually as well about the hunting of rhino. If you head to the interactive section at aljazeera.com, you'll find that and plenty more. Right, if you want to get involved with the NewsGrid, and believe me, we want you to get involved, tell us what you're thinking. We are always listening, even when we're not here. That is in part to our friend AJ, who is our Facebook bot. Log in on the AJ NewsGrid page on Facebook and send your questions to AJ, who will respond then with questions of his own. Once you sign up on Facebook, AJ will ask a couple of questions a week, sending in a poll you can see there as well, which you can vote on. You can have your say. And what would be very helpful is if you could send, or when you talk to AJ, send us where you are in the world. That'll help us get region-specific feedback from you. Makes it all the more relevant. That'll do it for this NewsGrid. Keep in touch with us on social media. The hashtag, as ever, is AJ NewsGrid. We will see you here again, Studio 14, 1500 GMT on Friday.